My name is Alan, and I'm 61. Up until last Thanksgiving, my kids, well, they probably saw me as just their old, used up dad. That's what my daughter said one time. Washed up. I acted like I didn't hear her, just smiled and offered her some more food. That's pretty much been my gig for the last 15 years, you know? The quiet guy, the one who gives, the easy mark. My son Jake and my daughter Stephanie are both in their 30s now. They're so successful, so sure of themselves, and honestly, they're a little spoiled. They grew up watching me scrape by. Their mom, my ex-wife, she left when they were still in middle school. She couldn't handle the stress, said I wasn't going anywhere. So she found herself a rich guy and left me with two heartbroken, angry kids who, over time, became pretty cold and dismissive adults. I never blamed them for being mad at me back then. Kids don't know how to deal with something like that. But as the years went on, their resentment turned into something nasty, something ugly, something that colored how they looked at me, how they spoke to me, how they treated me. They grew up in a house where every single penny counted. I did everything I could to protect them from that. I skipped meals so they could eat. I took on part-time jobs while I was trying to get this little piece of software off the ground. They never saw the late nights, the breakdowns, all the hours I spent coding, fixing, testing. They just saw the empty fridge and the junk car, and they never let me forget it. It wasn't like things changed once they hit their 20s or when they had kids. Jake is in cybersecurity, and Stephanie's a corporate lawyer. Smart as can be, making tons of money, and totally sure that every little thing they did for me, every gift or favor, was some kind of incredibly nice thing they were doing for me. When my old car died last year, and Jake helped me get a used Prius, I was constantly hearing about building equity. Stephanie would call every so often and eventually tell me, almost every time, that maybe I should start thinking about assisted living before things got bad. Like they were my parents or something. I never even asked for a penny, never hinted. But somehow, I always felt like a problem. Like I was a weight they were kindly carrying for me. So when Thanksgiving came around last year, I wasn't too excited. But it's what you do, so I told myself maybe this time would be different. Jake was hosting, like always. Big, fancy kitchen with those granite counters and 3 ovens. For whatever reason, his wife Alicia greeted me with that same, tight smile. I brought a pie. Store-bought, still warm. I've got to find the receipt. Dinner got off to a decent start, if you could call it that. The grandkids were glued to their tablets. Stephanie was on her phone most of the time. Jake went on and on about some new AI thing, talking down to me like I was completely clueless. I just nodded, chewing on my turkey which, let me tell you, I could cook circles around them on. Then Stephanie cracks a joke about my flannel shirt, something about my grandpa clothes. I laughed. It was easier than confronting her about being such a jerk in front of my grandkids. Then Jake, all relaxed with his drink, just casually drops this bomb. "You've been broke your whole life, Dad. We've had to support you." He didn't yell or anything, just said it like it was a simple fact. I put down my fork real slow, looked at them. Stephanie didn't even flinch. She actually smirked and then added, "Honestly, you're lucky if we even visit you in a nursing home. You should start thinking about that." I couldn't believe it. The room got so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. Alicia was still messing with the gravy, but it was quiet enough that I could hear my own blood pounding in my ears. For a second, I just sat there. It wasn't that I didn't have a comeback, but I was waiting for them to see what they'd just done. Waiting for a little bit of regret, you know, a moment of realizing they were talking to the guy who gave up everything so they'd never go hungry or scared like I did growing up. But nope, nothing. Just that self-satisfied look on their faces. They were so sure of themselves. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone. Look, I don't need anyone to tell me I'm awesome. I didn't start my business for a pat on the back. I did it because I believed in it, you know? It fixed a real problem in backend optimization for old systems, something nobody else was even bothering with. It took forever, but last autumn, a tech company in Austin bought me out. The whole shebang, cash and stock, and the final number came out to just over $12 million after taxes. That was enough to mean I'd never have to listen to a boss again. I didn't tell anyone, not even my best friend. Definitely not my kids. Not because I wanted to keep it secret, but because I wanted to see who they really were when they thought I was down on my luck. And that night, I finally saw them. So I looked over at Jake, then at Stephanie, and I just smiled. Calm, cool, no yelling or anything. Just that feeling you get when everything finally clicks. "Funny," I said, tapping my phone. "I sold my company for $12 million last year. Their faces didn't change at first. It was so unexpected. Then Jake's eyebrows went up. Stephanie's chewing just stopped. Her glass was stuck halfway to her mouth. "And after tonight," I said, "you're not getting a penny." I looked around the table. "You thought I was broke, that I needed your help. But the truth is, I've just been watching, listening, seeing who'd treat me like a decent person even when they thought I was flat broke. And it turns out the two people I raised can't even do that. And that's when everything went sideways. Jake's fork just went clatter on the floor. Stephanie recoiled like I'd just smacked her. Alicia just stared, like she'd just figured out something was seriously wrong. Finally, the kids looked up from their phones. I got to my feet, slow and easy. I straightened my collar and gave the table a final look, the turkey only half done, gravy making a mess on the good china. Jake was still frozen, his face a mask of shock. It was calm, not like a victory, not bitter, just quiet, like when the wind stops after a tornado. Stephanie's lips started to move, just a breath. "Wait, what?" I didn't say a word. I didn't need to, not yet. I went over to the counter where my pie was, still sitting there. I picked it up carefully, like it was the most important thing in the world, and headed for the door. "Dad, hold on," Jake said, jumping up so quick his chair scraped across the floor. "What do you mean, 12 million? Are you serious?" His voice kinda cracked, like he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. I stopped at the door. "Jake, I'm always serious. You just stopped listening a while ago." And then I walked out. The air outside felt amazing, like a fresh start. Cold, crisp. Down the street, some neighbors' Christmas lights were already flashing, even though it was still Thanksgiving. I walked down the driveway to my car, my heart pounding, but not from nerves. It was more like relief. For years, I just kept quiet, swallowing all their little digs. Then, finally, I spoke my mind. No anger, just straight talk. I sat in the car a while, just letting it sink in before driving away. Nobody chased after me. Not right away, at least. The next day, I switched off my phone. I didn't need their apologies, their damage control, or their sudden phony acts of friendship now that I had some money. They'd already shown me their true colors, and that was enough for me. But come Saturday, I had over 20 missed calls between the two of them. Jake left 4 voicemails, Stephanie 2. Alicia even sent one super awkward text about grabbing coffee and chatting. I ignored them all. It wasn't anger, it was about letting them stew in it. In the silence, maybe they'd finally get it. Maybe they'd see what their casual meanness had caused. Sunday, I went to that bakery downtown, the one with the cute chalkboard menu and the endless jazz loop. I got a coffee and watched the street. Saw a sweet old couple strolling hand in hand, a teenager helping his grandma out of a car. Just everyday people being decent to each other. My phone vibrated. I flipped it over. It was Stephanie again. "We need to talk, please." I looked at it for a minute. Then I opened the messages, scrolled back, past her texts from earlier in the year. "Can you Venmo me $50? I thought you were watching the kids this weekend. Are you sure you're okay on your own?" They weren't mean, just thoughtless, you know? Everyone figured I was washed up, some sad old guy fading away, never a real dad, just a ghost. I ignored their text. Instead, I fired up my email and wrote something I'd been mulling over for ages. It was about my will, a final update. Basically, "Hey everyone, some changes to my estate plan." After a lot of soul searching, I'm leaving most of my stuff to people who actually showed me respect and kindness, even when I had nothing to give back. That means some charities, a few close friends who have been there for me for years, and some scholarships in your names for kids whose families weren't as lucky as yours. I added, "This isn't about punishing you. It's just aligning things." Signed it, Dad. I reread it like 5 times before sending it. The explosion didn't take long to happen. Later that day, Jake showed up. And he brought Ben, his son. The kid looked totally bewildered, like he had no clue why his dad was freaking out. I opened the door, just stood there, listening to Jake ramble on about misunderstandings and everyone being upset and how they've always loved me. "You know that, right, Dad?" he said. I just nodded. Then I looked at Ben and asked, "You want some pizza?" He nodded. I took Ben to the kitchen, leaving Jake standing there like a deer in headlights. He probably thought I'd flip out, but I didn't. I gave Ben a piece of pie and asked him about his day. We chatted about Minecraft, math, and the new bike he was hoping to get for Christmas. He giggled, crumbs flying everywhere. For a brief moment, it almost felt like we were a normal family again. After they left, Jake lingered on the porch, looking like he had a whole lot more to say, maybe pleading, maybe yelling. But I just quietly shut the door and locked it. The days that followed were a messy jumble of texts, emails, and rambling voicemails full of sorry not sorry excuses. Stephanie even came by herself, trying to convince me it was all just a big joke, harmless ribbing, saying, "Oh, you've always been so sensitive, Dad." That was the last straw. I didn't yell or make a scene, but I was done. I looked her straight in the eye and told her, "You humiliated me. You put me down and laughed at me right in front of my grandchildren. You made me feel like some kind of pathetic handout, a dead weight." I paused, then added, "And the worst part is, you were totally oblivious because you're always focused on what I supposedly owe you, not the other way around." She didn't say a word. Her lips were pressed so tight together, I swear she was holding back a million angry comebacks. I finished with, "You blew your chance. Someone else gets to have a relationship with me now." Then I shut the door. This time, she stayed gone. It's been a couple of months now. I've seen my lawyer, gotten the scholarship set up, and changed my will. It's crazy, but I actually got back in touch with my brother, Sam. We hadn't spoken in 2 decades, all because my kids couldn't stand his, out there hippie vibe. Turns out, he's actually a really cool dude once you get past all the preconceived notions. But here's the real shocker, the thing they still don't know. That 12 million, that was just the first chunk of money. There's another part of the deal, a bonus if my software hits certain goals. And if things go as planned, the whole thing could be 3 times bigger. But honestly, I don't need it. The real prize was figuring out who truly belonged in my life and who was just there for what they could get. Speaking of life changes, let me tell you about Christmas. That Christmas was different. Not just a slightly smaller tree or skipping the eggnog kind of different. I mean a totally, earth-shatteringly different. You could feel it in your bones, even before the sun came up. I woke up in my new house. It's smaller, a 1-story place just outside of town. It's cozy, peaceful, and completely paid off. I made myself a real breakfast, eggs, bacon, and homemade cinnamon rolls. Not because anyone was coming over, but because I could. No more microwave meals or running to Jake's to be the guest of honor. It was just me by myself, and I felt so free. No invitations came that year. No family gathering, no passive-aggressive text from Alicia, no guilt trips, no weird text from Stephanie pretending I was always welcome as long as I brought the booze and kept my mouth shut about politics. Honestly, after I blew up Thanksgiving and spilled the beans about the inheritance, I think they were mortified. Maybe they just couldn't face me. Frankly, I didn't care. I had my own thing going. See, I didn't just ditch my kids. I didn't just leave. I was going toward something. I reconnected with the folks who'd always been there, quietly. The ones who never wanted a thing from me, but were there when I was down with the flu, when my roof sprung a leak, even way back when I needed help lugging that giant server rack out of my garage during those crazy startup days. Good old George from next door, Linda, my buddy from the library, even Mark, my very first employee, the guy who stuck with me for 3 whole years practically working for free. I invited them all for Christmas. They thought I was pulling their leg at first. George actually chuckled and said, "Me? At your house? You sure your fancy kids won't mind?" I told him straight up they weren't invited. So Christmas morning, my little place was packed and it was buzzing. The ham was baking. People were actually talking to each other, like for real, not performing for some audience. Nobody was judging anybody. Linda brought this crazy board game nobody could figure out. George scorched the gravy and swore it was the stove's fault. Mark showed up late but still snagged the biggest piece of pie. It didn't matter. Nobody was trying to one-up each other. Nobody was just waiting to brag about their new BMW or subtly boast about some promotion at work. It was chaotic and loud and far from perfect. It was the best Christmas I'd had in ages. We went around the table, sharing what we were thankful for, something Alicia used to make us do with these totally fake smiles. But this time, it felt genuine, When it was my turn, I didn't even mention the money. Nope, not a word. I just said I was grateful I finally figured out who my real family was and that it's never too late to make better choices. Everyone clapped. George's eyes got all watery. Linda raised her glass of orange juice in a toast. I'll never forget that moment ever. 2 days later, I got an email from Stephanie. No hello or anything, just a subject line. Ray, estate changes. 3 sentences, that's all it was. I've had some time to think. I think you're making a huge mistake. We are your children and that should count for something. I didn't write back. Instead, I shot the email over to my lawyer, copied myself, and added a little note. Keep the trust locked down tight. No changes, no exceptions. Jake, he took a different approach, all soft and sweet. On New Year's Day, he sent me a video. Just him and the grandkids in the living room. Each kid held up a card, "We miss you," and "Come visit soon." The whole thing felt so staged, like Alicia had planned it all out, scene by scene. I almost crumbled, I really did. Almost. But then Jake messed it all up at the end. He finished the video staring right into the camera and said, "Let's just forget about all this, Dad. We're willing to forgive everything." Forgive. Like he was the one who'd done something wrong. Like I was the one who needed forgiveness for finally demanding to be treated right. That word just totally brought me back to reality. I didn't say anything back. No calls, no nothing on social media. But I did take action. I called my financial advisor and asked when we could get the scholarship fund up and running that I'd been thinking about. And it wasn't just for Jake and Stephanie, but to spite them too. We officially started the Alan Kent Respect Through Action Fund in early February. Every scholarship came with a purpose. We gave them to students who treated people with respect, no matter who they were, how much money they had, or where they came from. Respect isn't something you get because of who you are. It's shown in what you do. The press release got some attention around town. Some news articles, a picture in the local paper. It was enough that someone at Stephanie's job saw it. I know this because 2 weeks later I got something in the mail, not a call, not an email, a card with her writing all over it. It said something like, "Maybe I didn't realize how far I'd drifted. I'm sorry." No name on it, but it was her I knew. I didn't bother responding because an apology that doesn't make things different is just talk. And here's what really got to them. The more people knew about my charity work, the worse things got for them. Jake's clients started asking if he was connected to the Alan Kent Fund guy. Stephanie's coworkers brought it up in their meetings. She was happy about it at first, until they started asking why she wasn't part of the board or why her dad was doing it all alone. She had nothing to say. So, all of a sudden, I was getting asked to talk at all these places: community centers, schools, even tech meetups. People who had no clue how rough things had been for me suddenly wanted to hear what I had to say. It wasn't about the money, you know. It was because I'd finally had enough, walked away, and put my own peace of mind first. But that's not the end of the story, not even close. Last summer, this fancy invitation showed up in the mail. One of those super elegant envelopes, all embossed and stuff, with a ridiculously fancy return address. Inside, an invite to Stephanie's wedding, to some guy I'd never even heard of. And get this, under guests of the bride, it had my name, but right next to it, in tiny writing, no +1. That's what really stung. It wasn't the fancy pants envelope or the crazy address from some ritzy New York country club. It wasn't even that I didn't know the groom. It was those 3 little words, all cold and deliberate. No, maybe, or we're keeping it small. Just a flat-out no. She knew I had someone. I hadn't made a big deal about it, but Linda and I had been in a few pictures together at charity events and stuff. And yeah, I was probably a little slow to announce things because of the kids. Some tiny part of me still clung to this dumb hope that things would get better with them, that maybe if I just gave them space, they'd come around. But this was Stephanie's way of saying, "You're welcome here, but only if you stay in your lane." I was tolerated, nothing more. I didn't respond to the invite right away. It just sat there on my counter for days. Then, the next time Linda came over, she spotted it. "So, are you going?" she asked, taking a delicate sip of her tea. "I don't know," I said, trying to sound casual, but that familiar feeling of dread was already starting to well up inside me. She stared at me for a bit, then just said, "Alan, you've always given people the benefit of the doubt, but I've never seen a guy get treated like a doormat more often and still bring them flowers." That really got to me, not because it was harsh, but because it was the truth. So, I finally made up my mind. I called the number on the invitation and asked to speak with whoever was handling the guest list. Turned out to be a wedding planner named Melissa. Super cheerful, maybe a little too much, probably charging a fortune. "Yes, Mr. Kent," she practically sang into the phone. "How can I help you?" "I'd like to RSVP in person," I said, "and I want to pay for some last-minute changes." "I understand the reception is all assigned seating?" "Oh yes, but we're a little over on the guest count." "No problem," I said smoothly. "I'll cover the cost of an extra table. Make it 2, actually, and don't worry about special meals, just make sure they're close to the head table." "Understood," she said after a slight pause. "And the names of your guests? I'll email them over, but make sure the table cards say Alan Kent, founder, AK Systems." big and clear so they can't be missed. I slammed the phone down before she could pry further. Right after that, I texted George, Linda, Mark, those two scholarship kids, my old tech incubator mentor, the one who'd spot me lunch when I was flat broke, and the librarian who'd let me hang around after closing to work on my business plan. I called each of them personally, and honestly, nobody turned me down. When the big day rolled around, I suited up in a nice navy suit. Nothing too showy, but enough to say, yeah, I'm supposed to be here. Linda looked amazing in a deep green dress, and she was just beaming, like she'd aged backward a decade. We showed up right as the string quartet was testing their instruments. Honestly, a few heads definitely turned when the guy everyone thought was washed up, a nobody and totally irrelevant, rolled up with his crew. I could spot Stephanie from across the lawn. I'll admit, she looked incredible. Classy, elegant, almost queenly in her dress. Her eyes caught mine, then flickered to Linda, then to the 5 others behind us. I just gave her a little nod, no big show, just a quiet, "We're here." Jake showed up a few minutes later, already looking flustered when he saw me. He dragged Stephanie away, and I watched them whisper furiously near the bar, both of them stealing glances at me like I was some bug that wandered out during the toast. We stayed quiet, respectful during the ceremony. When the officiant asked who presented the bride, it was her mom who stepped forward, just like always, polished and distant. She didn't even look my way. Whatever. The real moment was at the reception. They seated me a couple tables away, just like I requested. Not in the back, not near the bathrooms, but within eyesight. And when the DJ announced the toasts, I could tell Stephanie tensed up when they said my name. I got to my feet slowly, glass in hand. "I'll keep this short," I said, my voice even but firm. "Stephanie, Jake, you've both become such smart, successful people, and I truly mean that. You've built careers, lives, and now, Steph, a marriage. I hope it makes you happy." A few people clapped softly, but I wasn't done yet. I wasn't asked to say anything today, and I won't wear out my welcome, but I will say this. There was a period when I thought I needed to earn my kids' respect, when I thought maybe if I worked hard enough, made enough sacrifices, or gave enough, you'd see me one day. I took a beat, letting that sink in. But the reality is, I wasted too much time gauging my worth by what people thought, people who only focused on what I didn't have, never what I did. I raised 2 kids by myself during the toughest years of my life. I built a company from scratch, and I helped loads of students, friends, and neighbors get their footing. That's the legacy I'm proud of. I turned a little, motioning to my table. These people here, they saw me when I had nothing. They valued me when there was no money, no company, no fancy title. And because of that, they're family to me now, too. Stephanie looked like she'd been splashed with ice water. Jake's mouth was hanging open, mid-sentence. Whatever comeback he was cooking up died right there. Mom was giving me the stink eye, but I didn't even blink. I finished my toast to the happy couple. "May you have a great life together," I said, "and always remember, respect isn't something you're born with, you gotta earn it." I sat back down. It wasn't a huge round of applause, but enough people clapped. A few folks at our table, and some others who seemed to get what was happening. Even the groom's dad gave me a nod, like he'd just had a major realization. I didn't stick around too long after that. I had some cake, slow danced with Linda, and gave Mark a quick pat on the back. Then we slipped out. The party was still going strong, but I left a card on the gift table. Inside was a donation receipt, 50 grand to a domestic violence shelter in Stephanie's name. No hidden meaning, just a plain and simple point. That night, Linda and I sat on my porch, sipping hot apple cider under the stars. No angry phone calls, no furious texts. Just quiet. Peaceful, honest quiet. And for the first time in ages, I felt finished. Not beaten, but finished. Like I'd finally closed that book with some dignity and started a new chapter on my own terms. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing isn't saying, "I forgive you." Sometimes, it's saying, "I don't need you anymore." And I didn't, not a bit.